Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast. This is your segment, Top News Headlines today, June 14. We've gathered a stack of recent reports covering, well, quite a range from rising international tensions to domestic events, and even some unique news from Nigeria. Our mission here is to explore these sources and distill the most important nuggets of knowledge to help you quickly get informed. Let's explore right into the headlines.
Okay, let's start with the Middle East. There's a lot happening there, specifically escalating tensions between Israel and Iran based on these reports.
Right. Escalating how? What are the sources saying happened?
Well, the reports detail Israeli airstrikes. They apparently targeted what Israel describes as Iran's nuclear program and also military leadership.
Military leadership, too.
Yes, there's mention of an operation called Rising Lion. It reportedly hit sites like the Natanz nuclear facility and aimed at key Iranian officials.
And Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, he commented.
He did. The sources quote him saying the operation aims to remove the Iranian threat. Pretty direct statement.
Okay, direct action, direct statements. How did Iran respond, according to the reports?
With missile strikes on Israel. That's what the sources say. Iran's envoy to the UN apparently claimed the Israeli attacks killed at least 78 people.
78? Wow. Including officials?
Yes. Civilians and top military figures. The reports mention the head of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the chief of staff.
No.
Also, former National Security Chief Ali Shamkhani was allegedly killed.
That's a significant claim. So, a very serious exchange. Were there warnings going back and forth? The rhetoric must have been heated?
Extremely heated. The reports quote, Israel's defense minister saying, if missile attacks hit Israel, Tehran will burn. That's quite a statement.
Tehran will burn. That's stark.
Definitely. And they apparently see hits on residential areas as a red line. On the flip side, Iranian state TV reportedly warned that foreign military bases helping Israel could become targets.
So threats escalating on both sides. This obviously reached international bodies, right? The UN.
Yes, exactly. Iran called for a UN Security Council meeting. And during that meeting, Iran accused the U.S. of complicity in Israel's attacks.
And the U.S. response.
The sources say the U.S. denied the accusation. Their reported position was urging Iran to negotiate over its nuclear program, trying to push for a diplomatic resolution, essentially, to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon.
Diplomacy amidst the attacks. Did the nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, weigh in, given the Natanz strike mention?
They did. The IAEA Director General, Rafael Grossi, briefed the Security Council. He confirmed an attack happened at Natanz, specifically hitting the pilot fuel enrichment plant.
He confirmed it was hit.
Yes, and said it was destroyed. He expressed, serious concerns about nuclear safety and security during conflicts and called for restraint. He reiterated that nuclear facilities shouldn't be targets.
A critical point. Okay, let's shift focus slightly, still in the region. What about the humanitarian situation in Gaza? What are the sources covering there?
The reports highlight condemnation from Amnesty International. They're criticizing Israel's near-total shutdown of internet access in Gaza.
An internet shutdown. Why is Amnesty concerned about that specifically?
Well, their reasoning, according to the sources, is that it puts civilians at greater risk. It obstructs aid delivery, hampers rescue services, and crucially cuts people off from potentially life-saving information.
That sounds devastating in a conflict zone. Any other impacts mentioned?
Amnesty also reportedly voiced concern that the shutdown prevents documenting violations happening on the ground. They suggested it could be aimed at silencing Palestinians, making it hard to track things like deaths reported at aid distribution sites.
So it impacts information, aid, safety, and accountability. Amidst this, what's happening at the UN General Assembly regarding Gaza?
The sources say the General Assembly is preparing to vote on a draft resolution. This resolution calls for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire.
Immediate, unconditional, and permanent. That's a strong call. What else is in it?
It reportedly demands the release of hostages held by Hamas, the return of Palestinian prisoners from Israel, and a full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza.
A comprehensive list.
Yes, and it also strongly condemns using starvation as a weapon of war and unlawfully blocking aid.
And this vote, it follows a previous attempt in the Security Council.
That's right. The sources note the U.S. vetoed a similar resolution there last week. But the General Assembly, well, it doesn't have veto power, so passage seems likely.
And the humanitarian context for this vote?
It's dire, according to the reports. Over 54,000 Palestinians killed since October 2023, thousands more missing under rubble. There are warnings of looming famine, severe aid scarcity. Just a terrible situation.
Grim statistics. Did any other international reactions to the Israel-Iran situation pop up in the sources?
Yes, there was a specific mention of the Nigerian government. They reportedly condemned the Israeli strike on Iran.
Nigeria weighed in.
Yes, expressing deep concern and urging restraint from all sides.
Interesting. And the economic fallout from the Israel-Iran attacks, did that make the news?
Oh, definitely. The sources point to a quick and sharp reaction in financial markets. Oil prices jumped 7% apparently, and U.S. stocks slumped right after the Israeli attack was reported.
A 7% jump in oil. That shows how connected everything is.
Exactly. It highlights the sensitivity of global markets to Mideast tensions, especially involving oil. Fear of disruption hits immediately.
It certainly does. Okay, let's shift gears now and explore Africa. There's some, well, unusual news from Nigeria regarding food security.
Yes, this one definitely stands out. The Nigerian Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security reportedly declared a 3-day fasting and prayer program.
A government ministry for fasting and prayer.
For divine help with food security, that's the stated purpose. A circular mentioned in the sources outlined sessions themed Divine Intervention for Protection and National Development, scheduled at the ministry headquarters.
So staff are expected to fast.
Apparently so, on specific dates this month. It's perhaps an indication of the severity of the challenge, blending policy with a spiritual appeal during tough times.
And these tough times, they're reflected in other ways. Protests.
Absolutely. The reports connect this to ongoing protests across Nigeria. People are demonstrating against economic hardship, insecurity, hunger, and government policies under President Tinubu.
When did these happen?
They took place on Nigeria's Democracy Day, June 12th. Groups like the Take It Back movement were involved.
And what were the specific complaints?
The sources list several, accusing the government of failing people, ignoring welfare and security, focusing too much on the 2027 election, silence on killings, and even repressing protesters.
They called out leaders directly.
Yes, reports mention calls to President Tinubu and Governor Alia, urging them to protect citizens. These protests happened in Abuja, Lagos, Oyo, Ondo, several states.
A lot of public discontent there. Also from Nigeria, something lighter perhaps. Police permits for tinted windows.
Yes, a bit more administrative. The Nigeria police force extended the grace period for tinted glass permits. Quite a long extension, actually, until August 12, 2025.
August 2025. Why such a long delay?
The reason given in the reports is public feedback about the digital application process they reactivated. The police statement said the decision aligns with being citizen-focused and making the process easier and more secure. Sounds like maybe the rollout wasn't smooth.
It makes sense to respond to feedback. Okay, moving elsewhere in Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo. The UN mission head met with rebels.
That's right. The head of MONUSCO, the UN peacekeeping mission there, met with leaders of the M23 rebel group in Goma. This was reportedly her first visit to the city since the rebels captured it.
What was the aim of the meeting?
The focus, according to the sources, was on the MONUSCO mandate, particularly protecting civilians. The rebel leaders apparently expressed willingness for a peaceful solution.
But fighting has been bad recently, hasn't it? M23 took Goma and Bukavu.
Yes, the conflict escalated sharply since January. Fighting continues despite truce talks. And the reports mention UN experts saying M23 is supported by Rwandan troops, adding another layer.
And the impact on people. Any recent accusations?
Sadly, yes. Amnesty International raised concerns in May, cited in the reports, about possible war crimes by the rebels killing, torture, forced disappearances of detainees in Goma and Bukavu.
It's a terrible situation. How many people are displaced?
The sources state over 7 million people displaced overall in the region, and 100,000 just this year. It's a massive humanitarian crisis in that mineral-rich area.
7 million. And what's happening with the UN mission itself, MONUSCO?
It's in a drawdown phase. The sources say Congo requested the withdrawal. The UN Security Council approved it. Forces already left South Kivu last year.
How do locals feel about the UN mission?
Mixed reactions, according to the reports. Some residents in Goma hope the mission head's visit might bring change. Others are skeptical given the long conflict despite the UN presence.
A complex and tragic situation. Okay, let's move our exploration now to Europe. Political news from Poland.
Yes, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk's government survived a confidence vote in Parliament.
Survived. What was the vote?
243 in favor, 210 against. So a clear win, but shows the opposition's strength.
Why did he call the vote now? The reports mentioned a fresh opening.
That seems to be the idea. He requested it after the recent presidential election. That election was won by the nationalist opposition candidate Carol Naraki, who, the sources note, is backed by former U.S. President Trump.
Ah, so the political dynamics are changing.
Exactly. Naraki will replace a president who often blocked Tusk's reforms. Tusk himself acknowledged he'll face an equally reluctant new president. So the confidence vote looks like an attempt to shore up his government's parliamentary mandate before that happens.
Did that election result affect Tusk's coalition?
The sources suggest it did. It apparently rattled the coalition, which has struggled to deliver on promises like abortion law changes and same-sex unions. There are questions about Tusk's ability to achieve his goals before the 2027 election.
But Tusk is defiant.
Very much so. He's quoted saying, "I don't know the word surrender." He announced plans for a government reconstruction in July and appointing a spokesperson soon to unify the coalition's message.
Were there signs of tension during the parliamentary session itself?
Yes, quite a bit. Opposition lawmakers reportedly boycotted Tusk's speech. And there was an incident mentioned in the reports where a far-right lawmaker vandalized an LGBTQ+ exhibition in the Parliament building, tearing down posters.
Vandalized an exhibit inside Parliament?
Yes. The speaker criticized it, mentioning past incidents involving the same lawmaker. Suggests deep divisions and maybe attempts to gain notoriety.
Definitely highlights a tense political climate. Okay, finally, let's explore some domestic U.S. news. Some very tragic reports from Minnesota.
Yes, really terrible news. The sources report a fatal, targeted shooting. Former State House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were killed.
Killed? That's awful, and others were hurt.
Yes, another lawmaker, State Senator John Hoffman, and his wife were shot and wounded in the same incident.
Just shocking. What are officials saying?
The Minnesota governor called it a politically motivated assassination. He condemned political violence and promised accountability.
A politically motivated assassination. Did they say anything about the suspect?
The public safety commissioner reportedly said the suspect posed as a law enforcement officer. A deliberate tactic, it seems, to exploit trust.
That makes it even more chilling.
It does, and the sources place this in a broader context, referencing Giffords, the gun violence prevention group, mentioning nationwide attacks and intimidation against political leaders amid current division.
A disturbing pattern. And quickly, other U.S. news: an explosion in Las Vegas.
Yes, reports of an explosion outside the Era Resort and Casino on the Strip.
What happened?
Emergency services responded. Eyewitness footage reportedly showed a blast and a vehicle on fire outside the casino.
Do we know the cause?
The cause of the fire was unclear at the time of the reports. The source just adds a note about a recent shooting nearby, maybe hinting at general safety concerns on the Strip lately.
Okay, well, we've certainly explored a wide range of significant events today, all drawn from these reports. From the very tense situation in the Middle East, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, to political shifts in Europe, and some really difficult news out of Nigeria and the U.S.
It's quite a snapshot, isn't it? Directly from the material provided. Covers a lot of ground, a lot of heavy topics.
It really does. It makes you think, doesn't it? About how interconnected things are. You see the Middle East conflict immediately hitting oil prices, potentially affecting everyone. You see political divisions mirroring each other across continents. What does this collection of headlines, all happening around mid-June 2025, tell us about where things stand globally and locally? It leaves you with a lot to consider. Thank you for listening to today's top news headlines on IMC Radio and Podcast.